Okay, cool. So I think we are now recording. Great. So um, hopefully you can all see that. So today we are going to go through the first of the challenge. So the challenge um, is set up. Actually, I've flipped my next slide. I'm going to start again. It's being so ADHD. So who am I? I am Lauren O'Carroll. I am a mum who has ADHD myself. I have two kids who are neurodivergent as well, both ADHD. And as we know, ADHD doesn't travel alone. So they also have other conditions, one of whom I suspect is PDA, but hasn't got a diagnosis yet. So we have a whole barrel of fun in our house. And if your Christmas is anything like mine, you're quite glad that school has started again. Although actually I have a child sick at home today. So that's always fun. My whole thing is about taking families from extra to extraordinary. So we often feel, I don't know about any of you guys who might have ADHD yourselves, but I always felt like I was extra, I was too much. And when I became an adult and found myself and my calling and all of that, I realized actually that I was a pretty extraordinary person. And I want my kids to learn that for themselves much earlier than I did. I also want you guys to realize that for yourselves and for your kids. Because I think neurodivergent people are extraordinary. We do have the capacity to be extraordinary. We do incredible things. We tend to be the people who, have those crazy ideas, which are the ones that save the planet. So there's an absolute need for us in this world, but we often get put into this box of being different, extra, difficult, whatever. And I'm all about kind of breaking that apart. I am a peaceful parent coach by training. I specialise in supporting neurodivergent families. ADHD is the kind of common thread that pulls everything together, but of course, you never work with a family who only has ADHD because, as I said, it doesn't travel alone. I have a program called Growing Extraordinary Humans, and I am launching a kind of new version of that at the end of this challenge. So if you stick with me till Friday, you will find out all about that. But first and foremost, this challenge is just about giving you guys as much support as I can do. So whether you join any of the things at the end of this or not, I'm so glad that you're here, and that is kind of what it's all about. There's going to be loads of value just from being here. So thank you for coming. Also, do please share this with anyone you think is going to benefit from it. Everything's going to be recorded. I'm going to pop it all in the Facebook group. It will be up there for about a week before I bring it down, so people can join later and catch up. And all the days you don't have to do them in order. Although this is kind of the best order to do it in. So I'm glad that you guys have managed to make it live. Okay, so what is Growing Extraordinary Humans? So this is basically the framework that I work from. So we have at the bottom there, we've got Roots. So that's what we're doing today. And Roots is all about you as a parent, because we cannot parent well if we are really dysregulated ourselves and if we're not meeting our own needs. I like to think about this as like a phone battery. Some of us might start our days with really low batteries and forget to charge them. But most of us probably feel quite a lot of anxiety about that. If you wake up and you've got like 1% battery on your phone, you're going to want to bring a charger with you for the day, or you're going to be feeling quite anxious because you don't have enough battery for your phone to get you through the day. But how many of us start the day completely depleted? Maybe we've been up in the night with a sick child. Maybe we haven't given ourselves enough sleep. Maybe we haven't met our needs and we're just constantly sacrificing for other people. And we feel so depleted. And then, we start beating ourselves up because we're shouting at our kids, or we're, not showing up for our kids in the way that we wanted to as parents. And the reason for that is because we're not looking after ourselves. So Roots is about, how do we look after ourselves? How do we understand ourselves and our brains better? So how do we regulate ourselves? How do we understand the things that trigger us and why they trigger us? So that's what we're going to be doing today. Obviously, I can't cover all of this in detail because this is a 6-month program, but that's what we do today. Tomorrow is about nurture. So that's all around your connection with your child. And then the last section is around space. And that is all about empowering your child and also how you can set limits with them in a way that they stay connected to you and actually that they want to work with you. So that is what the program is about, and I'm going to touch on all of those bits on this challenge. Today we are covering the importance of co-regulation. We're talking about rewiring your brain, and I'm going to give you some exercises to start working with that concept. We're going to talk about reparenting yourself, and again, massive work on charging your brain as well. So that's a bit about looking after yourself. Just as a reminder, the more you can engage in this, the better. I am doing, everyone who turns up live today, if you stay till the end, I'll tell you about how you can get your bonus for coming live. So every day there's going to be a different bonus. And I'm also going to give prizes on Friday. There's going to be 3 prizes, one for sort of each day that I see how people are engaging. So engagement could look like, turning up on the chat now. I'm seeing people helping each other out to say how you can find the workbooks, etc. That's brilliant. If you're engaging, answering questions, asking questions, etc., that's great too. I'll try and keep an eye on the chat, but it might be tricky, so I might touch on it at the end or respond in the Facebook group afterwards. But also I'm going to set you challenges, and if you can come back into the Facebook group and reply on the challenge thread to the things that you've learned about yourself or the things that you've managed to do, that's all going to count towards engagement too, as is kind of bringing other people into the challenge that you think might benefit from it. The reason I'm doing that is because I know what it's like when you come to a webinar like this and you're like, okay, I really want to do this, it's really important, but actually I've got 6,000 emails and I can see my screen and I can see my phone and I'm trying to do 3 things at once, and then you miss all the important bits of the webinar. And I'm putting some value into this. I want you to get value from it, so I'm really encouraging you to just try and stick with it while you're here. Yourself that reward of actually being present and listening and getting the most out of it. A little bit of science, just to get the most out of this and understand co-regulation, but I'm going to keep it light, I promise. So does anyone know, and if you can let me know in the chat, how we learn to calm ourselves down as people generally? Like what steps do we need to go through? What experiences do we need to have in order to learn how to be calm? If you know, pop it in the chat. Don't worry if you don't know. Most people don't. I'm going to leave that question with you, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the triune brain. So we've got breath. Yep, absolutely. So that's a great one, Lisa, is breath, that we learn how to breathe and stuff. That is how we can get to calm. But how do we learn to do it? Claire and Danielle, spot on. It's modeling from others. We learn how to calm down by seeing other people getting calm, and co-regulation, as Danielle says. So this is all around experiencing calm from somebody else, and we pick up on somebody else's mirror neurons, and these neurons sort of pick up on what the other person, how they're feeling, how they're interacting, how their mood is, what their emotional thermometer is like. So if you imagine in the morning, you're stressed, you've got to leave the house, you've got loads to do, you've all got up late, you've got to get kids breakfasted and out the door, and no one's kind of really in the mood, and your kids are sort of like just playing and ignoring you, or on their phones, and just in their own little world, and have no sense of rush, and you're kind of like, come on guys, we've got to go, and you're getting really, really stressed. You'll notice that everybody else gets stressed too, and things go south very quickly. If we are able to be calm, if we're able to kind of have that calm presence, everybody else stays calm. Now, of course, we still need to get them out the door. But if you put that into a context of like having a meltdown, and actually, if we talk about it in terms of adults, so say you've come home and you've had a really bad day and you're really, really stressed and wound up, and you just feel horrible, and you come home and you tell your partner, I've just had this awful day. And they're like, oh my God, like, don't, it's fine. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Like, come on, we need to do this, this, and this. And they're bringing more stress into it. You're going to feel even more stress. They've picked up on your stress. If they can be like, oh, wow, tell me about it. If they can be calm and relaxed with you, if they can keep themselves calm and listen to what you're saying, you can calm down. You can absorb their calm, and you can learn. You can sort of borrow their calm. You can get it off your chest. You can get through that feeling, and then you can move on with your day. If they escalate with you, if they get stressed with you, if they start worrying about the things you're worrying about, or start worrying about something else, or get stressed because you're stressed, then you're going to feel worse. Everyone's going to get more and more stressed. So with co-regulation, what we're doing with our kids is, if we can get calm when they're having a meltdown, when they're having a tantrum, when they're getting angry, when they're having a hard time with something, if we can remain calm, they borrow our calm and they learn how to calm down, because their mirror neurons are picking up on our calm. So let me know in the chat if that makes sense. I'm going to explain a little bit about very, very oversimplified version of the brain. So we've got these sort of 3 layers of our brain, and we think that they kind of developed in order, sort of evolutionary wise. So the neocortex was kind of the first bit of the brain the reptilian brain, the bit at the bottom, is the first bit of the brain that kind of was developed. And that is in charge of our sort of survival functions and our instincts. So that's what kind of makes our heart beat. It makes our cells breathe. It's responsible for all the sort of bodily functions and our survival functions. So if something jumps out, we kind of have that reaction. We protect ourselves. It's our survival instincts. Then we have our limbic brain, which is a little bit above that, the bit in sort of orangey yellow. And that is our emotional brain. It stores some of our memories, our emotional memories, and our emotions can sometimes feed into our instinctual reactions as well. But that's kind of where we get stuck in our emotions. And then we've got our neocortex, which is our thinking, planning, and logic brain. And part of the neocortex is the prefrontal cortex, which you might have heard of, which is the part of the brain that is very affected by ADHD and our executive functioning. And that bit of the brain is responsible for our thinking, our planning, and our logic. So when we are so right now we're all in our sort of neocortex part of our brain, that's all integrated with our limbic brain, our reptilian brain. It's all working together. If you start to get dysregulated, if you get angry, if you lose your cool, then you are going to be in your limbic brain or your sort of reptilian brain. Your thinking brain kind of detaches, and you can't access that at that moment. And that's why talking somebody out of a tantrum, a meltdown, model of how we can explain that to our kids, and it's just quite a useful model to just explain that even in the meeting. I see. Ellie, can you hear anything? You need to click on one of the circles if you can hear anything. If someone doesn't mind just writing in the chat to click on a circle so that she can... she is in a circle. It's being recorded otherwise, Ellie, so if you can't... my sound's cutting out. Oh, no. Let me see if I can... Is it all right now, or is it still bad? See if I can get onto a different internet. It's okay now. All right, let me know if it keeps getting bad, and I will try and change my internet. I don't know if yes, okay, I'm just gonna check if I can go onto a different in the countryside. Is that any better? I'm going to go on with this one for a bit. Let me know if it's not any good, and I'll go back onto where I was. I'm just going to see what Lisa and Claire are saying. And I'm going to go onto the hand model while we're doing that. I'm now frozen. Okay. So Danielle's saying she can hear me and I'm not frozen. I'm going to continue. It sounds me cutting on and off intermittently. Give me 2 secs, guys. I'm just going to go and see if I can borrow my husband's phone and tether to him. Just 1 sec. I'll just go to Okay, hopefully that's better. I'm now on my husband's phone. Joys of trying to do this on Zoom. Right. Okay. Just let me know in the chat if you can hear me, and I am going to go on to talk about the hand model of the brain. Can you guys hear me? Brilliant. Okay. Right. So if you've got a pen and paper, you might want to take notes. What I want you to do is first make a fist. So if you make a fist, that is your whole brain working together, and that's actually the size of your brain is the size of your fist. Now, if you can tuck your thumb in, your thumb is your emotional brain, so that's representing the limbic system. And at the bottom, where our wrist is, we've got our spinal cord and our brain stem. So that is the primitive part of the brain, the bit that's responsible for like our breathing and all of that. And then we've got our thumb bit, which is our emotional brain. And then at the top, our fingers is our prefrontal cortex and our cerebral cortex. So that's the bit that's kind of our logical thinking. If you lift your fingers up, that's what we call flipping the lid. So that's when our emotions take over. So if you imagine teaching your child during a calm moment, they can use their hands. You can use your hands to explain it to them. But the bottom part of their brain is basically where they are when they're in their sort of, this is the whole brain working together, and when their fingers flip up, that's them flipping their lid. Their logical brain is completely detached, and they have no ability at that point to hear what you're saying, to make a logical decision. So that's what happens when we flip our lids. And it's the same for grown-ups as well. So when we are dysregulated, and particularly if you're ADHD, you're going to find it even harder to remain regulated. You may flip your lid too. And that's why you can't access reason at that time. So it's quite a good model to teach to your kids, and just a good way of remembering how our brain works and why sometimes we just become completely dysregulated. And hopefully that gives you a bit of compassion for yourself when you lose it as well, because actually it's not in your control at that moment to come back. So what we want to do today is look at ways that we can stop that happening, and then ways that we can prevent that happening, and then what we can do when that does happen. So the first exercise I want you to do, and if you're in your workbooks, then you can absolutely use your workbooks for this. Otherwise, you can just write it down on a piece of paper. But I want you to think about the last time you were really furious with your child. I've got a couple of spaces here. I think on the workbook I've given you 2 spaces, but you could do it for all your kids, or you could do it for just one child who, you find the most challenging at this moment in time. This is about understanding how your brain works and how you work with them. So I want you to write down first what your perception of the situation was. So if I give you an example of when I was picking up my kids from school, and I'd gotten to the car and they'd taken ages to get to the car, and I had stuff that I needed to do, and it was cold. And we got into the car, I strapped them both in, and then we started driving home, and they started arguing. And one of them wanted it to be quiet, and the other one wanted to talk. And the one who wanted to be quiet was starting to get really, really irate and was shouting at the other one and started throwing things, and they started fighting in the back seat. My perception of that situation was, oh my God, why can't they just do what I tell them? Why can't they be like other kids? Why is this so difficult? What's going on? Why is this so bloody hard? It made me feel like a shit parent. It made me feel like, why am I a parent coach anyway? It made me feel like my kids just don't get it. I'm still freezing, sounds on and off. Is anyone else still getting that? It's better for you, Claire. It might be your... Oh, and Lisa's saying a little. It should be good now, because I am on full signal with the phone. Hopefully the recording will be better. Vic's saying that's how you feel a lot of the time, frustrated at times, most days. So this exercise would be really useful, Vix. So write down what your perception of the situation is and how it made you feel. And let me know in the chat when you've done that, and we'll move on to the next bit. And for people with connection problems, this is going to be in the Facebook group. If the sounds are awful, I will re-record this and put a re-recording in the Facebook group. But hopefully you'll be able to get most of it. So exactly, Ellie, down a rabbit hole. Has anyone been able to complete that for themselves? And if anyone wants to share in the chat, feel free. I'm not going to force you. I know this is quite personal. Happened to me last night when driving. I mean, in the car, it's just so difficult, isn't it? Because you're completely detached from the situation. You're driving. You can't really do much because you're driving. So Danielle, I was just saying, if you could try and fill in this exercise for yourself. So a time when you were annoyed with your child, what your perception was of the situation and how it made you feel. Yeah, exactly. You feel like they don't give a shit about anything, so what's the point? Exactly. Totally resonate with that. Every day, multiple times, anxious before the exact. We have this anticipation. That's a really interesting point, Ellie. So we have something called negativity bias, and we look for things to confirm our negative beliefs. So if we are anticipating that something's going to go badly, then we're actually looking for our kids to do things that confirm that fact that it's difficult. And also to confirm that fact that I'm the shittest mother and I shouldn't have had kids. And Ellie, the fact that you're here makes me know that you're not the shittest mother and you absolutely should have had kids, and we can absolutely help you. My girl just wants to control every situation. Yeah, I completely hear you. I have a child with PDA, so I'm absolutely with you on that. I'm going to try and help you reframe this, okay? So we're going to go on to the next slide. And this, I want you to then write out the same things again, or you don't have to if that just feels like too much of a headache for you. But what was your perception of the situation? And we're going to reframe that view. So I'm now going to reframe the view that I just gave you. So I was in the car, I'd had a hard day, I was cold, I was dysregulated, I wanted to get home and I wanted it to be smooth and easy. I'd probably been seeing all the other parents in the playground with their kids who sort of skip out of school and are all happy and feeling a bit frustrated that that's not my situation. But how could I reframe it from my child's perspective? My child is neurodivergent. So my child finds school hard. I remember finding school hard, and I remember coming out of school and feeling really icky and horrible and not wanting to talk to anyone either. I have two children, and one of them is needs to have quiet. She a 3 sensory avoider, although can use her voice a lot when on her own terms, but it becomes very overwhelming for her when she hears a lot of noise. My other child needs to use that to stimulate herself, to get dopamine. She's very she needs to talk, a bit like me. So they both have needs, and their needs aren't being met. Or why some of the thoughts that we have happen. So in the workbook, there's a space to write down any negative beliefs that you're aware of about yourself. And then it gives you an opportunity to explore how they cause you to overreact. So in the example that I've done here, these are my own examples. So I've said, I believe, like one of my childhood beliefs, which I still struggle with, even though I know is not particularly true, is that I'm over emotional and I'm too much for people. And that leads me to think a lot of times that I should try and keep my emotions to myself, and people should keep their emotions to themselves. And we shouldn't lumber other people with those emotions. Now, I teach the opposite. I know the opposite. But deep down in my kind of belief system, that is a thought that kind of I still struggle with sometimes. And it sometimes makes me think that I should stop my kids from showing their big emotions outside the home. So I'm very happy with them doing it in home. But when I see them doing it in school or with their friends, I feel like, all my amygdala starts firing all these messages at me and going, oh, emergency, emergency, stop this is really bad, this is really scary. Actually, it's not as bad and scary as I think it is. That's down to my beliefs. Another one is I'm stupid, I'm slow, I make careless mistakes like, not checking the internet properly before starting this, like sending you 1,000 emails telling you that the meeting was when it wasn't. And that leads me to think people won't respect me if I don't hide how my brain works, if I don't cover it up. I need to pretend to be like everybody else. And that's why we mask. So lots of neurodivergent people will have that same experience. So have a little practice with that and see how you get on. The other one I'm going to give you is a reparenting exercise. So the question is, how did your parents react when you displeased them? And what did you conclude about yourself? So you might have concluded, for instance, that you weren't good enough in some way. And if you want to write these questions down now, I think they're in the workbook, then it's another exercise that you can do to help you, to sort of help your brain a little bit. So if you can imagine a compassionate observer, what might they have concluded in that situation? So if you imagine a situation where your parent was not being, where you displease your parent, maybe they've sent you to a room for something, and you imagine a compassionate observer, what might they say about your parents? What might they say about you? So maybe they can have compassion for your parents and say, they didn't know any better. They didn't know any different. That's what they were told to do. That's what everyone did. They sent their kids to their room if they were emotional. And also, what would that compassionate observer say about you? Maybe you didn't deserve that. You were just being a child and you had big emotions and you didn't know how to express them. That you weren't too much. You were perfect just as you are. And then you can give your younger self an explanation for your parents' behaviour and tell yourself that you're lovable just the way you are. And when you do this, I encourage you to say it out loud and see how you feel. Because if our brain hears us saying, you are lovable just the way you are, even if we don't quite believe it, if our brain hears our words, the words coming in, it processes it in a slightly different way and it will get in more. Okay, does that all make sense? Yeah, Ellie, if your memory, I haven't read your comment above, but yes, you might have a lot of buried and erased memories from your trauma. I would suggest that if you've got that much trauma, not to do this exercise alone. If you want to do this, then I would suggest that you do it with a trauma-informed therapist because it's, so don't do this one because I think it's probably going to be too much to do on your own. So that goes for anybody else who has quite intense trauma. If you don't feel safe at any point, if you feel like it's getting too much, if you start to feel sick or dizzy when you're doing this exercise, then just stop. The key thing to do when you're doing this is you need to feel safe, you need to feel supported. So to do it with somebody is much safer. You might be frustrated not remembering, Ellie, but it's actually how the brain protects itself. Something like EMDR is a really good way to work through trauma when you don't remember it because it's working sort of with rapid eye movement and your sort of like internal brain system. So your body remembers trauma, even if your brain doesn't. And your brain probably doesn't because it's protecting you from remembering those horrible memories which were traumatic to you. So it's a really great function of our brain in some ways. And actually to heal from trauma, you don't need to remember it. But I completely get that it's frustrating. I have lots of memories from my childhood not memories. I have lots of things from my childhood that I don't remember as well. And yet, Danielle, your brain may be empty from being a kid for similar reasons. A lot of people growing up with ADHD have complex trauma because there's just these death by paper cuts almost. Like there's all these little things that keep happening to us and we don't we don't know we don't know why things are difficult, why we're getting these messages. We keep trying really hard to sort of fit in and we don't. And the repeated messages, negative messages about us, can create that kind of complex trauma as well. So it's really common not to have those kind of memories. But even if you can think about something really small, so like the example I gave you about like my parents sending me to my room, that was certainly not the most difficult thing that happened to me. But I do remember being sort of dragged upstairs to my room once. So that is a useful one to work on because it's not a big one. It's not something that was deeply traumatic, but it's also just something that has caused a belief system in me. Yeah, your ideas being shut down even when they're brilliant. So if you can use that example, Vix, for instance, and work through that. So I had this idea, and then how did I feel when I was shut down with that? And, what would the compassionate person say to you? That was a great, brilliant idea. That idea was so brilliant, and it might have made the person who shut you down feel threatened, feel like, I can't hold this. I don't know what to do with this. So they shut you down because it scared them. And they didn't know any better. But you didn't deserve that either. Yeah. Claire's saying you used to keep your emotions in so as not to upset anyone, and your parents never cried. Yeah. Yeah. It's and it's so good to cry. It's so healing for us to cry. That's why I try so hard to be different with my sons. Is that, yeah, exactly. And we do want to be different with our kids. But what I want you to take away from this is that it's also really hard to be different when we've got all these things that are sort of stuck in our bodies that are making us react in certain ways. And that's why we did that exercise, the previous exercise with belief, to try and understand what our beliefs were about ourselves. So that we can understand why we are acting in certain ways with our kids. So I'm going to move on just because I've gone way past 10 o'clock when I was hoping to finish this for you guys. But I just want to give you some things to go away with in terms of kind of what we can do to support ourselves. Obviously, when I do this in my program, I go much more in depth into all of this because, as you can see, there's so many layers and it's not something you can just work through quickly. But some ideas for sort of filling your own cup. So we've got mindfulness. That can feel really inaccessible to somebody with ADHD because it can feel really quite scary and hard to sit with your internal self, sit with that stillness. There are lots of different types of mindfulness, and there's some great apps out there like Insight Timer, which has lots of different types of meditations by lots of different meditation leaders. There's a pro version and a free version. I use the free version, so you can kind of explore that. I also have some. I think I've got one in the Facebook group, like a drawing one. And yeah, I've got lots of other ones I do with my program. But try some things that work for you, even if it's something like colouring or diamond painting or going for a walk and just trying to sort of be in the moment. That's what mindfulness is about, and it gives our brain that nice rest. And if you can find a mindfulness exercise to calm yourself down, that can be really helpful, or a body scan one to start working through some of the trauma that's stuck in your body, that can also be helpful. But again, I wouldn't do that with any big trauma if you have been traumatized. If you really do struggle with trauma, I would do that with somebody who's trauma informed, because if we don't do it when we feel safe, then we risk re-traumatizing ourselves. So I really encourage you not to try and work through trauma that feels really big on your own. Journaling can be a really good way. It's kind of like free therapy. Self-compassion, so just being kind to yourself, trying to reframe things. Think about what that compassionate self would say to you if they were if they were watching what you're telling yourself. You're not a shitty parent. You're just having a hard time. You've had a hard time in your life, and there's lots of things going on that are creating the experience that's happening now. Do things that you love. A lot of us as parents stop doing the things that we enjoy, and we just try and get on with the schedule. So try and do something each day that you love. Try and meet your physical needs. So particularly if you're ADHD, you might have the need to move quite a lot. So make sure that you're building that into your day. Like if I don't exercise most days, I'm not exercising at the moment because I feel really sick and my daughter's been sick and I'm terrified that I'm going to be sick too. So I'm not doing that at the moment and I'm struggling a little bit. I probably will go out for a walk in a bit because I just need to do something. Otherwise, I know that I'm going to explode at my kids when they get home because I can't hold myself if I don't get that physical need met. We can do little nervous system resets. So we can sort of set an alarm on our phone and just, when that goes off, just notice how we're feeling. Take some long, deep exhales. So if we do exhales, that brings in our parasympathetic nervous system. It calms us down. That's our rest and digest state. So if we focus on long, slow exhales, it's a really quick hack to kind of get yourself into calm. And weeding your week is one that I love. And I know a few people in here have said in the Facebook group that they're really, really overwhelmed. Look at your week and see if there's anything that you can prune back. Are the kids doing clubs? Is it actually helpful that they're doing the clubs? Are they getting more from those clubs than the ferrying around that you're having to do and the overwhelm that you're feeling and therefore not being able to shut up as a parent? We often feel like we have to just keep doing these things because we started them. So my challenge to you is to really look at that week and say, actually, do I need to do all this stuff that I think is so important because I don't want to look at it and question it because that feels too much. Sit down with somebody and ask them to help you go through it and look at it from, with a bit of perspective. And then in the moment, we can use things like mantras. If you go back on my post from sort of over the Christmas period, the Advent period, I put a mantra up every day, so you can have a look at them and get some ideas for some mantras that you might be able to use. And then I've got my Roots Nurture Space framework, which is basically, I've explained that before, but it's also, you can use it to try and calm yourself in the moment. So roots, you notice where you are, you feel yourself rooting to the ground or your chair or whatever. You try and feel something solid beneath you or lean on a wall or something and just feel yourself feel gravity pulling you down, feel it rooting you down, feel yourself in space. Then ask yourself, how can I nurture myself? What do I need? Can I take some deep breaths? Do I need a glass of water? Do I need to go to the toilet? Do I need to give myself a hug? What can I do to nurture myself? And then space. Do I need to take some more space before I go back to this thing? So if your child's having a meltdown, okay, in the car, probably can't, but maybe you can pull over and get out of the car just to have that change of space. I often find if there's big stuff happening at home, if I just go outside the door and I go into the garden, just having that fresh air is enough to kind of flip me back. And it's a great hack with my kids as well. And also ask yourself, do I need to take some more space before I go back to address this situation? Because often we feel like a situation is an emergency. But if we go back in when we're activated, we're probably just going to make that worse. So unless your kids are actually beating each other up, probably isn't as much of an emergency as you think it is. Okay. Let me just go to the last slide. I think it's the last slide. 2 more slides. So basically, this is just to remind you that I'm going to announce prizes on Friday. I'm also going to tell you how you can work with me on Friday. So please do come to the Friday session. If you can't, then make sure you catch the replay. And do share this with people that might benefit from it. The live bonus of my course for attending live today, which will give you a lot more based on the answers that I've had in here. I think I'll probably give you let me know kind of meeting your own needs. No worries.